Hello, everyone, and I want to thank you for joining us for this very important podcast brought to you by Crime Victims United. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Nina Salarno-Besselman, and I am the president of Crime Victims United. And here at Crime Victims United, we are working very hard to bring public safety, the voice of the victims, to the state of California. It seems as if recently in California, victims of crime have no voice. And in fact, it appears that the current administration and policies of the legislature are trying to strip victims not only of their rights, but of their voice. And at Crime Victims United, and me personally as well as president, we believe strongly in the voice of the victims and that they have a place, a rightful place in our criminal justice system. With that, today I'm excited, I'm honored, and I'm saddened to introduce you to Jessica Corde. I'm excited and honored because she is one of the strongest women I've known, and she coined a phrase that we're going to talk about a little bit later called "fight like a mom." But I'm saddened to have Jessica on this podcast because what got her here is the violent and horrific murder of her son, Marcus, but not,
Marquise.
I'm sorry,
Marquise.
I'm sorry, Marquise. And it's not only the horrific murder that got her here, the horrific treatment of our criminal justice system, which continues to victimize her. But Jessica's strength in coming on this podcast is so important because she's speaking out for victims. And we want to educate you in California about crime victims, their voice, and how we need to change the system and bring back balance. So with that, I want to introduce you to Jessica.
Hello.
Jessica, I know it's
Yes.
really tough, but can you give a little bit of background about Marquise and about the horrific events that led to his death?
Okay, so Marquise went to a party that he found on social media, April the 17th, 2009. When he got to the party, he was the only Black. And there was a gang that showed up called the Mexican Tinto Killers. And then there were the Pomona 12th Street, which are racist Latino gangs. So they basically walked up to him on the dance floor, pointed to their neck. One of them had a tattoo, Mexican Tinto Killer, on his neck, said, "Nigger, do you know where you're at?" They surrounded him, beat him up at the party. You know, he tried to get away. He was crawling. Witness testimony says he was trying to crawl into the house. And the lady said she actually tried to help him, but they started to fight her too. And she basically made a way for him to get up and run. So he ran 100 yards. And they caught him. They beat him. They stomped him. They beat him with boards and sticks. They stabbed him. They shot him in the head. He had multiple fatal stab wounds, multiple non-fatal stab wounds, a gunshot wound to the head. They robbed him. They took his clothes off because that's how the Mexican gangs disrespects their victims. They just expose them, their penis area. They just degrade them. They robbed him and stole his shoes. So in that process, I was so ignorant to what the justice system stood for. I thought that they were on my side. I thought that we were fighting against them together. But through this whole process, as it plays out more and more, the justice system does not work for us. It's not even a justice system, because justice system means there's a system set in place to obtain justice for victims and their families. Well, that's not what happened with me. I literally was fighting the justice system and the murderers of my kids. So we went through that process. I buried my son. First, I had to fight to get him declared a victim because they wouldn't give me victims of violent crime because they were gang members. And so they tried to say that since they were gang members, my son was a gang member, but that didn't make sense because my son went with a white boy and a Mexican boy. There's no gang on this earth with Black, white, and Mexican in it, and no Black gang member.
Because the horrific murder was done by gang members, racist gang members.
Racist gang members.
They being the system, the victim of crime, the district attorney's office, they automatically assumed that Marquise was
Was
a
a gang.
so you
Yes.
had to fight to show that your own son was not a gang member.
He didn't even have a tattoo. He wasn't on no gang file. I mean, no black gang member goes to an all Mexican party. That's just common sense. So, but I did have to fight. It took me 7 months to get my son declared a victim, but I fought. So in the process of me going through it, I'm trying to get the hate crimes applied to their case. They wouldn't do it. When they were texting each other.
Talking to the district attorney's office in Los Angeles.
Yep, the district attorneys in Los Angeles.
So even though, and you know this from court records, which we're going to get to in a minute, even though they used the N-word, which is horrific, even though they said that they were killing him because he was African American, Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon and his office refused to declare this a hate crime.
Well, George Gascon wasn't in office at that time, but that same office refused to charge them. And they are called the Mexican Tinto Killers, the Mexican nigger killers, the Mexican black killers. That's the name of their gang, but they still refuse to put hate crimes on them. And their text messages to each other, I have all of that, were saying, I think we killed a nigger last night. While they were killing my son, they were saying, get the nigger, kill the nigger. They were sending text messages, which the detectives retrieved their text messages saying, did the nigger we effed up die? I stomped the F out of that nigger's face. I hope the nigger rest in piss. I think we killed all of those text messages. They still wouldn't apply hate crimes.
The Los Angeles County, was it sheriff or police that you were working with that got those? Is that the sheriff's department or the police?
It was the Pomona. That was the Pomona Police Department.
But they did a great job in retrieving that evidence.
Yes, they did. Jennifer Schaefer was the head detective on the case, and she did an excellent job. She put in many hours for my family to get the evidence to bring these criminals, these monsters, these evil racists to justice for my son.
Get to, and I'm grateful that you had such help from law enforcement, and that's awesome. You know, there's some of those first responders can make a difference, obviously. So you get to the Los Angeles District Attorney's office. What did they end up charging these members with? Do you recall?
Most of them were started off charged with murder. It was a 14 arrest, and then it went down to 11, and then they had another DA reject because they knew that they played a part, but they didn't have the strong evidence because they were all on top of him. So, you know, the witness account was not as strong with them as the ones that they kept the charges on. So we ended up getting 10 convictions, but there were a minimum of 14 and a maximum of 20 that murdered my son. And
there were some lead individuals in this, lead criminals, and they were charged with murder.
Those were the ones that ended up going to prison, some for manslaughter, most of them for murder. And then a couple of them were willing to testify, so they got lesser sentences. And so I was pretty much pleased with the outcome.
Okay. So you were happy with the deputy district attorney at the time, working with them. They seemed
No, they initially gave me Ian Fan, who was rude to me, disrespectful. And one day I went to court because I had moved back to Kentucky, and I flew out here I never missed a court date. And they wanted to be tried separately. So I was out here a lot. And one day, one of the murderers walked into court with me. And I said, how did he get out of jail? And Ian Fan says, well, his family put up their house to get his bail. And I said, well, how much was his bail? And he said, oh, it was $100,000. So I went home, being the mom that I am, I don't play about my kids. I did my homework to try to find out how much was his actual bail. And Ian Fan lied to me. So I called up Ian Fan and I said, you lied to me. You said his bail was $100,000. He said, well, all he did was take your son's shoes. And I said, so if I turn your ass upside down right now and take your shoes, to you, I've done too much, and you have life in your body. They brutally murdered my son and took his shoes. You're leaving that part out. I don't want you to be the prosecutor on my son's case. He said, good luck with that. So I ended up calling his supervisor, and she said she would look into it. And she called me back and said he's been on the case for a while and he knows the case, and I'm going to leave him on the case. So now he felt really cocky because he was very rude to me already. So one day we had court, and after court he called me and I said, "Can I call you back?" And he said, "Sure." So I called him back and we started to talk, and I engaged him in a dialogue about the things that he had said. And he said the most disrespectful stuff to me. He was saying, "Oh, well, all he did was take your son's shoes. That's no big deal." And I said, "You know what? I know it's illegal to tape record a conversation without letting the other party know, but I'm willing to go to jail for my dead Black king. So you got 48 hours to put my son's case on another prosecutor's desk, preferably a Black man. Because when you look at my son's pictures, you don't see anything you connected to that you care about. So I'm gonna take this tape to channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. You got 48 hours. And in 24 hours, I got a new prosecutor by the name of John McKinney, a Black man.
And John, you were happy with the result that John did?
I was 150% happy with John McKinney, not just because he was Black, but I felt like that he could see my son as human. A lot of times in the Black and brown community, they're so used to these murders that they're desensitized to us. So if John McKinney looks at my son's pictures, he could see, maybe he looks like my nephew, my cousin, how I looked he could see a person. And people separate that because people always say it's not about race, but a lot of things are about race. So John McKinney came not just because he was a Black man, but he had compassion for me. He made decisions with me included. He cared about how I was treated, how my son was represented. He made many phone calls to me to keep me aware of what was going on in the case, something Ian Fan never did. So yes, I was pleased.
Everybody gets convicted. And you think you've got some breathing room. I mean, obviously nothing ever brings back your
Well, let's go back, because before, when I come back out here for trial, they gave me a victim advocate by the name of Maria Foster, who was friends with the murderers of my kids. She was my victim advocate. I can't make this shit up. So I go to fly out here for court, and she takes me to the wrong floor. And I'm saying, "We're not on the right floor." She's like, "No, we're fine. We're fine." And I said, "No." After a while, I said, "I'm going to go look down on the floor that I think we're supposed to be on." So of course she has to go with me. So when she goes down there with me, court is over. And they're coming out of the courtroom, all of their family members, and they're crying. And they go straight to Maria and call her name. And she's hugging them, crying with the murderers' families in front of me, my victim advocate.
That had to be devastating.
Because she made me miss that court date. That was very important to me, to see who murdered my son. And on purpose, she derailed me because of her own personal issues, when she just should have said, "I can't take her and be her advocate because I know some of the people that murdered her son." But instead, she kept me and tried to hide it, and then injured me in the most horrific way because I spent money to come out here. So the district attorney's office had to pay my way back out here for the next court date, pay for my rent-a-car, and pay for my room, and give me a new advocate.
I'm glad that they honored that. I believe that was under DA Lacey. So, but moving forward, you think you have some peace. Everybody's convicted. And I think the horrific circumstances of the murder and what you went through the DA's office, and then to get there and at least get some semblance of justice, must have helped heal a little in your heart. I know, never completely. I know from personal.
I felt like I could try to now, because I went through so many court dates and I had 4 trials. So 4 trials, and add on to that all the court dates with each person, because they wanted to be tried separately. So, and I think it was Steve Cooley. So yeah, I felt like I can begin to heal, and that the first day of trial I got, which was supposed to be February the 10th, finally for Marquise, I got a trial. They postponed it to April the 2nd, which was, I have another son named Markion, was his birthday, and he came out here for that trial. So he said, "Mom, I'm gonna stay It's my birthday. I want to see who murdered my son. He got murdered on his birthday, which was my first day of trial for Marquise. And that Friday, I had court in 2 different courtrooms for both of my sons while I was doing fundraisers and car washes to bury him. So now I'm exhausted. So just to get the verdicts of guilty and getting past Marquion's trial, now I've done 5 trials and multiple court dates. I'm ready to heal.
And you think you have that breathing room, and then comes the
Clemency.
administration and
Clemency.
the what I would call the no justice system for victims.
Exactly.
You then now land in the lap of George Gascon, who's now the district attorney of Los Angeles County, correct?
Right. Right.
And you ended up facing a parole hearing
Right.
for which murderer of Marquis?
Martin Harrow.
One of
Marquis.
the main murderers, correct?
One of the main murderers. He's the one that testified to catching my son and beating him and stomping him. So until the homeboys came and did the rest, that's what he said.
Okay. So you were at this point expecting that the DA's office, Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, is going to support you, help fight, help keep this horrendous, racist, hate crime murderer in prison. That's what you would think, what should happen in our justice system.
That's what I thought. I did. I really thought that.
So tell us what happened.
Well, for one, they only gave me a week's notice, and they're saying that I didn't sign up. But you have to remember, Maria Foster was my advocate. So a lot of my things were altered. And they gave me a week to prepare. And then they tell me, John says, I can't go in with you. So what do you mean?
Your district attorney, the man held you, got you through, got justice, who you believed in, all of a sudden says, I can't attend this parole hearing.
He said, I can't.
Why couldn't you attend it?
He said, because George Gascon is not allowing them to support victims in the parole process.
That must have devastated you. I can't even imagine.
Made me feel confused because I'm thinking, what do I do? Like, I have to fight for my son. So I ordered my son's murder file, and so that I could read the intricate details, so that I can know the role that this particular murderer played in my son's murder from beginning to end. And in that process, I had to see my son's murder pictures, which I never seen before.
Oh, Jessica, I can't. So you actually have to read the file with.
Yeah.
Granted, you sat through the trial, but you're also in shock. Not everything always
I sat through the
registers.
trial, but in the trial, I have the option of leaving out when stuff starts getting tough for me. So I would leave out, and when they would put up pictures, John already knew I don't want to see them, so he would tell me to leave out of the courtroom every trial.
So now, with 1 week to go to face this hate crime murderer,
I'm desperate.
you are now looking at your son's murder file, not only reading details, but having to view crime scene and autopsy photos. Am I hearing you correct?
I did, because I was desperate to make sure that my son got everything that he deserved, that I could give him, because the county wasn't going to give him anything. So,
any words to describe what it looked, what you felt when you first saw those pictures?
when I saw my baby, he was laying in the street and his eyes was wide open, his mouth was busted open. The back of his head was busted open, and he had a gunshot wound in the head. He had a stab wound in the heart, and he had 2 stab wounds in the back. He had his clothes all the way down. I could see his penis was exposed, and he had blood everywhere. It was just, I had to go to the hospital, actually, because I never seen him. I knew what happened to him, but to see it, it took me somewhere else. So I ended up having to go to the hospital. My ears never stopped ringing. As a matter of fact, my ears are still ringing to this day. I'm been sent to see an audiologist and just ear specialist, like, because I literally almost had a nervous breakdown. So I went to the doctor, and he was like telling me, Miss Corde, you have to stop. You're gonna have a stroke. They're gonna let him out. You just gotta accept it. But I couldn't stop, because I seen my son dead in those streets. Now I know they killed him just because he was Black, and I made him Black. And because I made him Black, it was my job to do what everybody else refused to do, which was to fight for him. He's my son. That's my son. I love him. So,
Jessica, I just, what you went through, no human, no mother, no father, no human being should have to do that. But again, it's because of the policy of District Attorney.
policies and the directives of George Gascon, who literally said, he set us up. He sets us up in that parole hearing. It's rigged. It's rigged in favor of the murderers, the racists, the rapists, the child molesters, the robbers, the violent criminals. Is rigged. And he sent me in there with nothing, no weapons to fight back, because I'm not privy to the information that the parole board gets and the district attorney's office gets. I don't know his psychological reports. I don't know his risk assessments. I don't know his behavior in prison. I know nothing but that I love my son and y'all murdered him. So that's the only weapons that I had, because they disarmed me. The district attorney's office, they on purpose disarm victims and send them in there rigged in a fight that they know that we can't fight alone.
Right. So you view this murder file, but I think you've hit on something really key. Prior to a parole hearing, if a district attorney is present and there's no absurd policy like Los Angeles has, they actually get a file as well. And
yes,
they can arm themselves, and you would not have had to view those.
And they can ask questions. I can't ask questions. I can't bring up things that happen that the parole board doesn't bring up. I can't, there's information that they might not even know that I might know because I'm his mom, or the prosecutor might know because he was on the case. I had none of that information. All I'm operating on is pain, what I heard that I tried to forget, and the things that I read when I was forced to read them.
And I bet the district attorney's office, this alleged advocate, never even told you you had a right to an attorney under Marcy's law to help you through, did they?
No, they never told me anything.
They never gave you your rights. So here you are, 1 week out. Then can we jump forward? Can you talk to me a little bit about, I have been in my own parole hearings for the murder of my sister. So I know it's just a horrific place to be. So can you talk to me a little bit about what that day was like, what you experienced at our administrate and with the commissioners?
Well, first of all, they had heard that I was trying to study my son's case. They sent the news out. They actually sent a man by the name of Moses Castillo to try to represent me through Marcy's law. When he gets there, he comes the next morning. He finds out about me the night before the parole hearing. He comes in the morning. I send him my son's case. He comes in the morning. They refuse to let him represent me. They refuse to give me another parole date because I only got a week's notice when I'm supposed to get 90 days.
We're now talking the Board of Parole Hearings.
Deborah San Juan, who was the commissioner. She was the commissioner, and she was clearly in control. And she clearly already had her mind made up. And me personally, I believe it's because of the connections that are made in this process of recidivism and prison reform. They make connections with celebrities. They make connections with people in high places. And there are certain inmates that they want free. And I feel that Martin Harrell was one of them.
Why do you feel that? Tell me what happened in this hearing.
Well, I feel like that in the process, in the trial, Martin Harrell was in a program in the juvenile hall where he met Scott Budnick. And I know that Scott Budnick testified in my son's trial for Martin Harrell. And
what
I
did he testify about? It wasn't
his
there.
character. His character.
That's unbelievable.
It's the truth.
I believe you, but it's unbelievable.
So he testified wanting to help get him out. And in 2018, he had Martin Harrell's case was sent to Jerry Brown for clemency. Like this just keeps going on. Like April the 17th, 2009, it's a day that absolutely never ends for me. So in 2018, I'm fighting against Martin Harrell again.
Well, wait, let's start April 17th, 2017. Parole hearing.
2009. That 9 was my son's murder date. And
Right.
I'm saying that day never ends for me because they keep re-victimizing me.
And what was he, when he was convicted, what was he sentenced to? He's convicted of murder.
Murder. Originally, he was sentenced to 40 years to life.
Okay. And when did
And
the parole hearing come up?
it came up after 11 years.
So on a 40-year sentence to life,
Well, on the 40-year sentence, out of nowhere, because he has these connections, he gets a high power an attorney. A law firm by the name of Lathan and Watkins comes in to represent him. At this point, I've been through 5 trials. I have 2 murdered sons. I'm exhausted, I'm debilitated, I'm destroyed, I'm depressed, I'm unhappy, and I'm struggling to participate in my own life. So I'm like, with John McKinney, and say, we can go in there and fight again, Ms. Corde, or we can give him a deal because I know you're going through a lot. And I said, what's the deal? He said, well, we can do second degree and he won't get out for 15, he'll go up for parole in 15 years. And usually on a murder, they get flopped the first year. So he'd probably do no less than 17 years. At that point, I couldn't do any more trials. So I said, okay, I'm thinking 7, huh?
you're exhausted, you're torn apart emotionally.
And I have no one that really cares. They wouldn't do my son's story. Like, how can you be killed by 20 people just for being black, shot, stabbed, robbed, beaten, chased 100 yards? They chased my son 100 yards. They had every opportunity to turn around. They wanted his life. They wanted his death. They got what they wanted, but now they don't want us to be held accountable for it. And the state doesn't want to hold them accountable. The county doesn't want to hold them accountable. And they have people implemented in the system, Jennifer Schaefer, Deborah San Juan. They have made a pact with some of these celebrities to release these people, these murderers.
So I hear what you're saying. So the parole comes up 11 years. Now we know you've had to prepare yourself because of George Gascon. You're in this hearing. How are you treated as the victim?
Horrible. Deborah San Juan wouldn't even look at me. She was eating while I was talking. She was eating. And then when she would look up, she would look at the ceiling while I was talking. And I told my family, I said, she's going to let him out and I'm not going to sit here. She's disrespectful. And they was like, just calm down, because everybody knows me, knows that I say what I feel. And so when I walk away, it's because I don't want to be the reason, if she lets him out, that I can feel like it was because of me. So I left the room for a second and I prayed and I came back.
So
and I watched her.
Just interrupt for a sec. You are here by yourself, fighting for justice. You're talking about viewing those photos to the parole board. You're talking, as we're talking today, what it took to be a mom to do this. And the commissioner, the governor's appointee, is eating and not even looking at you.
She would not look at me. And she was rude to me because when we asked, could the man help us, Moses Castillo help us with Marcy's Law? And she was like, no. Like, she talked to us like we were irritating her. But when she talked to Martin Harrow, she treated him with kid gloves. She treated him like he was a kid.
And did she listen to him when he gave his?
She did listen to him. She listened to him. She respected him. And even after my whole family spoke and we all cried out, and he said to her, the only reason he's dead is because he's Black. We hated Black people. We don't see them as human. I was in a racist, evil gang. We hate Black people. I was raised to see.
Actually says in the parole hearing that the
murderer actually said this. Yes, he did.
Can you repeat that?
And he said,
what did he say?
He said the only reason he's dead is because he's Black.
And yet this was a hate crime.
It's not hate crime. He said the only reasons he's dead is because he's Black. We hated Black people. We didn't see them as human. He said, I was raised in this racist, evil gang where we don't see Black people as human. And we felt disrespected that a Black man would come to our party. He said that. He said, even I did it again while I was in prison. I was in a race riot. And when I was stomping and beating that Black man, all I could think about was Marquise LeBlanc, how I stomped and beat him. And then Deborah San Juan asked him what happened to him in the prison riot. He said, oh, I got away with it because I lied. I got away with it. He told him that. And they still granted him parole.
So wait, after this, after you're there talking and they granted him parole 11 years later.
They granted him parole.
And
And she told him, congratulations, you made parole, just like that in front of us.
so wait, the
Congratulations.
man who admits that he killed your son because he's black has no
Yep.
remorse, I take it. Doesn't say he's sorry.
Well, he says the things that they told him to say, but he's not sorry. He says, Marquise didn't deserve that. He says the thing, he had a lawyer there. I didn't have a lawyer. He had a right to have a lawyer. He had to have a right to have a lawyer speak for him. He had the right to have an opportunity to prepare for me, but I didn't have an opportunity to prepare for him.
So after he admits this, and then also admits to killing another African-American in
Well,
prison.
he didn't say he killed him. He said he was in a race riot and he was stomping and beating him. I don't know if he passed away.
Because he was African-American.
Because he said because he was African
He
American.
lies, and the parole board thinks he's reformed and they grant him parole.
Well, and they even asked him, if you were to go back to prison, if we released you, what would it be for? He said, probably hanging with the homeboys. And I said, the same homeboys that hate Black people, that don't see us as human, we're still out here. And she didn't even look at me. She was going like this.
So they grant him parole.
She said, congratulations, you made parole. And he starts to cry and she goes, oh, don't cry, don't cry. We won't hold your past against you. In front of us.
I can't even imagine what that was like to hear those words. No,
I was angry.
Rehabilitation.
I was so angry because I felt like I thought I was in a dream. First of all, you mean to tell me all those people can murder my baby because he's Black and admit to it and send text messages about it and brag about it and still come before the parole board and said, I even did it again because somebody else was Black in prison and you congratulate him and grant his parole? And then I call head of California parole, which is Jennifer Schaefer, to complain. And Jennifer Schaefer tells me,
she's in Governor Newsom's administration, or Jerry Brown's, whoever's governor at the time. Head of
it was Newsom when I called her.
Okay, so it was Governor Newsom.
And she said to me,
releases somebody that's not reformed, and then you call to talk. And how are you treated by the person that's supposed to be the head of this?
And she said, well, I can't really give you anything until I get the transcripts. So it took longer than usual to get the transcripts. And when they get the transcripts, his testimony is missing, only his. I can't make this up. Everything he said.
This is yes, all parole hearings are recorded, as we know, and then transcribed. So everything but the inmate, the murderer, the hate crime murderer's words are missing.
Everything was there except for his testimony, except for his admittance, except for him saying he hated Black people, except for him saying my son. Everything he said was missing. Everything I said was there. Everything she said, everything everybody else said, except for the part where he tells his story, is missing. So Jennifer Schaefer tells me, well, I don't need the transcripts to make my decision. To me, he's not a racist. To me, he's not a murderer. And to me, he's not a gang member. She said that to me.
Wait, say that again. I don't think
Jennifer Schaefer, head of California parole, tells me that she didn't need his transcripts to make her decision because to her, he's not a racist. To her, he's not a murderer. To her, he's not a gang member. And I start to cry and I said, how do you get to say that to me? He admitted it himself. She said, well, that was years ago. Don't you have forgiveness in your heart, Jessica?
Wait, she told you if you had forgiveness in your heart.
She told me that. She told me that. She told me that.
What did you say?
And I said to her, I asked her if they would have killed her sons, would she still feel the same way? And she said, I can't answer that. So when she said that, I said, you answered it. So you're basically saying your kid is more important than mine. You should not be running the head of California parole when somebody could tell you they murdered somebody and they murdered them because they were Black and that they were a part of a hate gang. You should not be able to tell me and be so bold to tell me that you don't believe they're racist and you don't believe they're a murderer and my son is dead. You don't deserve this position. You're sitting here and you're setting all of us up because you're going to free them all. And somebody else needs your job. And I didn't say nice words to her. After I cried, I cussed her out. You're disrespectful.
Very.
You're telling me.
How arrogant of her to tell you to have forgiveness when you just.
She did tell me that. She said to me that he doesn't deserve punishment. He deserves healing because he was under 26 years old and his mind was not fully developed. And I need to understand that these poor little Black and brown kids have been through this foster care system and this is what she's telling me.
And that somehow justifies a brutal murder. Like what you said, you said something in the parole hearing that really struck me. Your son ran 100 yards. They could have turned around. That shows such an evilness and a calculating, devious mind.
Not only that, they killed him in front of the whole party. 100 plus witnesses. You can't get more evil than that. They didn't even try to hide it. After they beat him, stabbed him, multiple ones, they went to the car and got the gun, walked up and shot him point blank in the head while he was dying in the streets.
And the head of the parole is telling you that he didn't know what he was doing because he was under 26 years old.
And that he deserves to heal. But
healing?
I said, what about us? You guys keep ripping this wound open. You don't let us move forward in our lives. What about my kids? They were under the age of 26 when their brothers was murdered. Where's the healing for them? She said, well, I don't need his testimony for me I'm going to go ahead and go forward with granting his parole. She told me that.
What was your next step? I know you're a fighter and I know you didn't give up. So what did you do next?
Well, after I said things to her, I knew that she wasn't the coup de grace. She wasn't the end all be all. And she didn't know that I knew that. And she didn't know, like I told her, you have the right kid, but the wrong mother. You don't get to disrespect, devalue, and dismiss my murdered kid and tell me that yours is worthy of justice and mine isn't. And sit in that high power position and make low level decisions and expect I'm gonna tuck my tail and walk away. I'm not gonna sit here and sing kumbaya. A fight is what you want, that's what you're gonna get. So I began my process of trying to figure out how to get to the governor. So I sat up in front of Gascon's office for a whole week from 10 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. I had a friend make me some sign holders because I already knew I was in it by myself. I couldn't get help from other victims' rights. They wasn't helping me. He made me these sign holders and I had a big old banner about 6 feet that had my son's face on it. I posted up in front of the Hall of Justice from 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon by myself, and I protested. And I protested until news started coming, and all my mind was to get to the governor. I need his attention. So I started talking. Then I started doing interviews. I made my way to Sacramento, and I started doing press conferences in Sacramento. Then I just started writing letters and getting letters and doing all the opportunities that I could get to expose what they did to my son, because I can't see the governor knowing everything that happened to my son. Now, I didn't feel that he would, but people were telling me that he's a part of the same system as Gaston. But to me, I still had to try, because if I didn't try, I gave up on my son. Now, if I try and he still gets out, I did all I could do. So I finally got a meeting, the governor's office, and I spoke with a lady by the name of Jasmine, and she was very kind to me. She told me that we have to put it in writing. You have to get letters. So I was able to get letters from different people. I wrote my own letters, and I had help from Barbara Turner and Moses Castile. They all did what they could. But the district attorney's office with John McKinney, he really couldn't do much. He
And that's
couldn't write
not
a
his
letter.
fault. He's subject to his boss's policies.
Yeah. So he couldn't do much, but just, just cheer me on. And so we wrote the letters, and I was exhausted. I had been to get emergency care twice because I almost had a nervous breakdown after I seen my son's pictures. And I think that it culminated with the disrespect and the value that they place on these murderers is unbelievable to me. But I just can't process you telling me that he deserved to be free in 11 years and my son is locked in that casket forever. He doesn't get parole. Accountability is everything for me. They intended to kill him. They chased him down. They beat him up. There were 2 crime scenes. They beat him up at the party and they chased him down the street. They were evil. They still are evil. And so on my birthday, May the 21st, a phone call came from the governor's office. They didn't even know it was my birthday. And they said they were going to reverse the decision. And nobody can tell me that that wasn't God. And I realized in that moment that I have to be the voice for the mothers who don't know how to articulate their pain into words. You might imagine how many mothers sat before Deborah San Juan before I got there, who tried to call Jennifer Schaefer. See, Jennifer Schaefer has to go. But I can only do one thing at a time. When I finish fighting for my son, my goal is to get her out of her position. Somebody that deserves that position that is for the people, not the people that murder, rape, rob, molest the people, the innocent people, victims in our society in the state of California. That's what they play on. They play on, oh, we're going to save the poor little Black and brown people from the police and over sentencing. And people believe them. But it's just a ploy that they use to get the votes, because you're only appealing to your compassion for these murderers. They have all these organizations and all these programs for them, but I literally have been fighting for 12 years, and you only get 30 sessions of therapy for a lifetime of trauma. I buried 2 kids, had no family, no friends. I still had to get up, try to get them to school, clean the house, wash the clothes. There's no way. My kids were eating Hot Pockets, pizza rolls, noodles. I wasn't there. I was there, but I wasn't there. There should be a program that comes in, and we should be eligible for IHSS. I'm fighting for that now. I've been speaking with a couple of people in the governor's office and if someone in your immediate family is murdered, you qualify instantly for at least 6 months to a year of IHSS, and 6 months to a year for them to pay your rent, pay your mortgage, pay your light. You can't get up there's mothers that I've met who their family members have been dismembered. So you can birth a baby and get 90 days, 3 months maternity leave paid, but you bury a kid. You can bury a baby and only get 3 to 9 days bereavement. That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. And it shows how horribly victims are treated and just left out completely. Like you said, you had other children that are hurting, that need their mom.
They didn't care about them. They were under the age of 26. They were under the age of 26. Where was their compassion? They were Black and brown.
Let me come back on your birthday, and you're right. Definitely God. The decision's reversed. How long is it reversed for?
Just 18 months, but it gives me time,
Yes.
But then last month, I get another call from John McKinney, 4 more of the murderers. Well, the same murderer that came up for clemency and got denied, Martin Harrell, then came up for parole and got granted, then reversed, Martin Harrell. He's in a petition with 3 other murderers to get their convictions thrown out. So I'll be in court August the 17th.
So after convicted by juries in the justice system, after going through all this, after fighting to get a decision reversed, you're now back in court because they want to get their sentences thrown out based on, I think, a new law that was passed by this governor, correct? About having being under 26 and the resentencing and all that kind of stuff, correct?
Yes.
So again, our legislature now has passed a law signed by the governor that favors the murderers and puts the victims back into having to relive. I mean, I know, and I know for the murder of my sister, it lives in your heart every day. But like you said earlier, when it's in your face, that wound just bleeds. And now you're going to have to go back to court because these under 20, they were under 26 when they committed this horrible crime, now get a chance to be resentenced or have it thrown out, correct?
Yes, they do. And not only does that happen, I still, now I have to fight again. Like I'm losing myself. And I feel as a mom, like that's my son. So if I die fighting for him, I still won because the state's not going to fight for me. The county's not going to fight for me. The parole board has people implemented in the system. When I spoke July the 19th at a rally for victims, I told them that George Gascon does need to go, but he is the fruit. He's not the root. So you can get rid of him, but the root will still produce fruit. Jennifer Schaefer, Deborah San Juan. I don't know about who else is there are other people that say it's Newsom. To me, Newsom granted to parole. I don't know. So whoever it is, they're my opposition. And I don't have a problem speaking truth to their imaginary power. I'm with it.
And same with the legislature who's passing these ridiculous
laws.
laws
Right.
that are
I
allowed.
don't know, like, I'm not into like the legal stuff until they force me. So you would know more about who's passing the laws than me, but whoever's name you give me, I'm gonna take it and run with it and work against it. So you give me a name, I'm with it.
You got it.
Because
But so let's talk about though, because I know you have this incredible strength, and I know for the next legislative cycle, which we'll be joining forces with Assemblyman Cooper, you, myself, what are we trying to do for victims? Why don't you tell us?
we're trying to pass the Marquise LeBlanc Fair Parole Hearing Act to ensure that none of us, because I still have some coming up for parole, like 3 more in the next 2 years. None of us have to endure the disrespect and the lack of information that they don't give us. The inability to fight on the level that we deserve to fight on, the way that they disarm us, we're taking that back.
Does it seem crazy that we have to pass a law so that there's balance in our system, so that the truth can be heard?
I don't even believe that this is real. I can't believe that there's people really say that, oh, they're Black and brown and they're young, so they can murder, they can rape, they can kill. They can't help it, they're Black and brown and young. Well, I've been Black, young. I was raped at 16, raped at 19, molested at 6, was in a domestic violence relationship for 17 years where he went to jail for attempted murder on me. And I still have this to this day, not murdered, robbed, did anything to hurt anybody else on purpose. That's an excuse that they're using. Instead of holding everybody accountable for doing wrong, they're picking and choosing. They have an agenda and not a purpose.
Hey, your strength is amazing. And we will stand tall with Assemblyman Jim Cooper on this, and we'll do our best. I know, joining forces together, we'll fight like moms to get this passed. So why don't you tell me about your signature phrase?
Which one? Fight like a mom or?
Fight like a mom.
Fight like a mom, because are you a mom?
I'm a mom.
So, okay, so when I say that to a mom, what's understood don't need to be explained, right? You
right.
Understand what it's like as a mom to love your kid. You understand what it's like as a mom to protect your kid. Even animals that are moms understand that. So explaining this to the legislation, explaining this to the county, explaining this to the state and the parole board is asinine to me, because Deborah San Juan is a woman. So Jennifer Schaefer is a woman. So why do I gotta fight so hard for my kid? Nobody's gonna fight harder than a mother. I don't think that I know that there's dads that fights, but there's just something about a mother's love that we don't give up. We don't give up, and we don't care. We're not intimidated or impressed by dollars, titles. I don't care. I don't care who you are, what your title is. You can get it over my kid. I don't care, because people seem to take these titles and apply them in the way that they are entitled. I don't see that. I'm like a bull in a china shop when it comes to my kid. I'm willing to take down and break down anything in my way of his justice. So when they tell me that Jennifer Schaefer is not the end all be all, I'm going to get to Governor Newsom. Now they're telling me that I got to fight still, then I'm coming for the legislation. You have to change these laws. You can't tell me that I don't get to live a healthy quality life because I'm always fighting. You're always hurting me. You're always opening my wound. You're always denying the fact that my son is a victim. You're always making these murderers victims. You can't tell me that you're going to keep saying that to me for 12 years. And sooner or later, you done poke the bear out of hibernation. And now that I'm woke, they're like, oh my God, it's a bear. Because they feel like that when I talk to them like, I spoke to one of these ladies I kept calling her phone and she never answered. Then when they reversed the decision, she called me 4 days later, and she's a victim advocate. And to tell me that they reversed the decision, well, I got that information Friday, this Tuesday or Monday. And I've been calling you for months. She said, you don't know how to communicate. You don't know how to communicate because I know by the way you talk to Jennifer Schaefer. And I said, I communicate very well. I talk to you like I don't like you. That's on purpose. I'm communicating to you that I don't like you. It's my son. I can feel what I feel. You're not going to tell me that my son is not going to be the reason that I talk to you the way you're treating me. You're treating me like I mean nothing, so that's how I talk to you. They got these titles and they feel entitled. I'm not impressed. When I look at my son's obituary, when I look at my son's murder pictures, when I smell my son's clothes, when I smell his shoes, that impresses me. And that gives me the energy and the purpose to move forward and be his voice. And not only his voice, the voice for other mothers who don't believe that they can speak up for themselves or don't have it in them or don't know how to articulate pain into words, then I'm their voice. Now that I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. That's it. I'm in this. Until we get what we deserve, I'm in it. I will allow anybody that loves and cares about victims to use me while I'm being used by God.
Jessica, thank you for taking the time to. The story is incredible. It's heartbreaking. Your strength is amazing, and God bless you.
And thank you, and I do. I wanted to say this. Prison reform should not mean victim harm. They shouldn't have to pick between us. They can care about both of us. It's on different levels, but you don't gotta harm us to do prison reform.
That is a very wise, very true statement. Definitely. And as president of Crime Victims United and us now having a long-standing friendship going forward, I look forward to standing with you for victims, and we will speak for those. And
well, let's do it. Let's do it.
Thank
I'm
you.
ready. Just call me. Thank you so much for having me on. God bless.
Thank you.